how to get buyers to sell themselves. Hey, I'm Donnie Bovine, the CEO and founder of Success Champion Networking and author of Fuck to Focused. This is Growth Mode, a podcast all about growing and scaling your business. Hanging out with me as always is Kevin Snow, the sales automation tactician and genius. And in this episode, we are going to talk about how to get the prospects to really convince you that they want to buy your stuff. I still remember how I got into door-to-door sales in the heating and air conditioning realm, and I was getting ready to quit my job because I started off as a grunt climbing up in the attics under the houses, and I absolutely hated it. And the day I was going to quit, I got out of my truck and I started walking up, and Jerry, who's my boss, goes, "Oh, that's a I'm going to quit face." I'm like, "You damn right, I'm out of here. I don't want to do this crap anymore." He goes, "Hey, before you quit, will you try something for me?" And I'm like, "What am I trying?" He goes, "I'm going to hand you a stack of brochures. I'm going to drop you in a neighborhood, and I want you to go knock on doors. And if somebody will let us come look at their systems and we sell something, I'll pay you a commission." I immediately said, "I'm in." And he goes, "Wait, just so you understand, you're not making any money unless we sell something." I'm like, "Cool. I don't want to climb in the attics or under houses. I'm in." So for like 3 weeks, he was dropping me off in various different neighborhoods. And each time he would drop a cooler of water behind a bush. And that's what I'd have to go back to get my water to, hydrate throughout the day. Because he'd
So you didn't die.
Yeah, pretty much, because it's Texas. So one of the days he looked at me and goes, "Ah, dude, I forgot the cooler of water." He goes, "Suck it up. And if you get hot, just bum a glass of water off of somebody's house." So along comes about noon, and I knock on this gal's house, and she opens the door, and she realizes I'm a sales guy. She goes to slam, and I said, "Ma'am, just 1 second. I'm so sorry." I said, "But can I just get a glass of water?" And she invites me into her house and was like, "Oh my God, yes, please." And I explained to her that I didn't have any water while I was out there. And as I sat down at her table, she said, "All right, well, you're in here, but you might as well go ahead and tell me why you're here." And I said, "Well, to be honest, I have no idea." And she goes, "What do you mean you have no idea?" And so I tell her the story of Jerry dropping me off in the neighborhoods and asking me to go all these things. She goes, "So Jerry just needs to come look at my system?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, call him up." I'm like, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, call him up." So I called Jerry up, and I'm like, "Dude, you're not going to believe this shit." He goes, "All right." I said, "This gal wants you to come look at her system." He goes, "Really?" Like, he totally doesn't even believe me. And so he drives over, and I think we did this like quick, $100, job for this lady. And I think I made $5. And, for the rest of that summer, I promise you, I had to pee a lot, because from then on out, every house I went to, all I would say is I'd walk up and say, "Hey, can I get a glass of water?" And here's the thing. I think one of the biggest things people screw up when they're selling is they forget to become human and allow the customers to help us by allowing them to show us what they want to do and how they want to use our services and how they want to buy things from us. So let's dive into this a little bit, Kevin. But I love telling that story because, a glass of water taught me sales. Crazy. So go ahead.
I think this is really important that we're having this conversation, because if you are convincing and manipulating your buyer to say yes, they're not going to have a good taste in their mouth after the sale is done, after they get the product. I remember when I was just out of college, just got my first really cool and, high paying job, had a place to live. It was making decent money in sales. And I was like, I need a new car. I need something different than the old beater that I brought with me from college. I have money now to pay for it. So I went and looked at some different vehicles at the local dealership. And contrary to my normal decision-making process for purchases, I bought something like right away. There was not like leaving and coming back and thinking about it. I actually signed a deal, and I don't know if it was just because I really liked the car or I got talked into it really well, but I left with the vehicle, brand new car, and I immediately I got home, I was like, oh crap, what did I just do?
Yeah.
And I had the buyer's remorse like you wouldn't believe. I laid in bed. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm so screwed. How am I going to make this payment? What was I thinking? And I had the cash at that time. It wasn't like it was like, oh my god, I'm going to lose the apartment. Um, but yeah, because they got me to say yes so quickly. I completely was not excited about the whole fact that I had a new car. Most people when you get the new car, it's like I got a new car. I'm gonna go drive and show it off. It's like, oh my god, how do I return it? Is really literally what was going through my head. So getting your people excited that you're talking to, getting them excited to say yes is really key because that just sets you up to have a really badass engagement with them and to build a raving fan.
Yeah, man, I totally agree because we've all bought things that we regret. And in most situations, when we bought those things, it was either because we were sold, which nobody wants to be sold, or we were hyped, which is almost as bad as being sold. Sometimes people will just get you hyped and they'll still sell it to you even if they know you don't need it. And that's where we want to focus a lot of this conversation on is how do you get these buyers to actually lean into you as part of the overall conversation. And if you've listened to any of our other episodes, you'll know Kevin and I are huge on anti-pitching anything. And I think that's what a lot of people still are trying to do is pitch, convince, overcome objections, hard close, those type of things. And anytime you try any of those activities, it's a surefire way to turn off your prospect from wanting to do anything with you because they're as soon as they feel like they're being sold, man, they're out. So I think one of the biggest things that you have to do, like the first thing you have to do, is become a human being and not a salesperson. Like you've got to go into that conversation ready to have a regular conversation and willing to connect with that individual on a somewhat personal level, me more than Kevin does, but and really, because how those introverts are, they just want to get down to business.
Lies, all lies.
But you've got to become human, which most people, they are putting on their sales hat, if you will, and which puts them into this weird, gregarious, over the top sales maneuver and move.
Yep. Yeah, that the conversation thing is so key. So over the weekend, I got someone posted on Facebook, hey, we're looking for someone who can do some digital marketing for us. Here's what we need, blah blah blah. It was someone that I'd been following and engaged with a bunch of their posts on, and never had a goal in my head to actually sell them or do stuff with them, but I liked what they were doing, and and their messaging resonated with me, so I'm like, I'll follow these guys. So I replied, I was like, yeah, totally. I dropped you an email, look forward to hopefully chatting. So I sent them an email. We ended up talking on Saturday night at 7:30, jumping on the phone, and it wasn't hey, here's what I can do for you, here's why you need to buy stuff from me, blah blah blah. It all started off talking, because he fights jujitsu. He's starting some fight tours and all kinds of different stuff. So we ended up starting off talking, because I wrestled, and so we talk about the competition thing and how you just get bored seeing the same people all the time. And we had that conversation. It got to the point he was like, all right, I suppose we need to talk about the digital marketing stuff. I'm like, yeah, we probably should. So, and we had that conversation. By the end of the call, he was like, so I'm going to tell all the other people that we're good. We don't need to talk to any of them. And, you followed my stuff, and I remember you from engaging, and my operations guy remembered and recognized you. I don't see why we would work with anyone else. And it was because we had a real conversation.
Yep.
and we had engaged with each other, and it wasn't at no time it's like, hey, I can do this for you, and if you don't do this, you're gonna lose this. There was no pitching ever.
Yep. And what I love about this is a couple of things. One, you'd been engaging with their content for a while because they're putting out content. But two, for me, I always like letting people go first, when I'm trying to sell something because I want to hear their story. You already had that natural inclination that there was a commonality for you guys to talk about, with the wrestling, the jujitsu. You would actually ask intelligent questions about, their practice, and the things that they were doing. And, one of the ways to become human is to actually geek out on what they geek out on, especially if you're really into it. I mean, don't fake this part. I mean, don't geek out on jujitsu if you don't give a shit. But if you know that there's things that they're into, I mean, the kind of the point of becoming human and that idea, and the second point of having real conversations is the moment when the prospect has to tell you, okay, let's talk business, right? You've
Yep.
played your cards right through that conversation, and they've enjoyed it enough that part of them is already into you and how you do things. It's now yours to fuck it up from there by turning it into a pitch fest next, right? So where most people go is they're like, they get to that moment of let's talk business, and they're like, all right, well, here's my binder, here's my PowerPoint, here's my pitch deck, and they start beating the shit out of them. But a great example of, connecting with somebody and having real conversations. And I think a lot of the next part is then opening up that freaking inventory of questions that get them to lean into. And sometimes the questions are in form of teaching them something or educating them on something or walking them down a path, so you can finish off with a does that make sense questions, or how would you see yourself using this moving forward, which I'm assuming you did a lot on that call.
Yeah, it was a lot of, they were telling me, hey, here's what we want to do. They're really focused on a website thing, which, and I told them in emails, I don't normally do websites for people unless I'm into their message or what they're trying to do. So he's telling us what he did, and part of it is they're starting this our tour fights, and they're going to go all around the world and bring in fighters, or all around the country anyway, bring in fighters for it. And he was like, so I started asking him questions about the email stuff, the part that I really geek out on, the automation stuff. I'm like, so how are you communicating with all these fighters who reached out, that have reached out in the past? How are you keeping them all update on what you have coming, on things, tracking who's in, who's not, all that type of stuff. So then he started telling me all that. And, I just kept asking questions and finding out how they wanted to do things and where they are at in their development and who they had on their team that was going to be doing stuff. And at the end when it came, when I'd gotten all my answers, then it was just really giving them, hey, here's what I would do if I were you, here's how I would use this, I would look at doing this, and we can actually integrate this into your site so that now you get notified, but you can actually see all your fighters in a dashboard, and you can see where they're at, and you can be tracking the events, and we can start actually building out things that'll help you scale this so that you can have 2 or 3 events in a weekend at different points of the country and not pull your hair out.
Dude, maybe we should coin the phrase educell. I think that's what
Yeah.
we really do. I mean, between you and I mean, if people were to watch us actually sell, is we're educating as much as we're selling. And that's what you just did to the whole thing is here's what I would do if I were you. This is what I would do. And it's almost a way of selling to where you're giving them all the answers and the solutions they could do without you.
Yeah.
Which to me is just a cool way to always looking at it, because the real people that would do it without you are not the people you want as clients anyway. So, but it also shows your genius in what you do.
Although there is something to say about giving it all out to the DIYers and letting them try it and then fuck it up and
And then
then
come
hire
back
you
to
for more. It's like, I need you to fix this. I'm like, well, that's actually going to cost you more
cost more.
because it's going to take me time to fix it and then build it the right way.
For
So
sure, for
yeah.
sure.
So there is that piece too.
But I think that's the power of part of this, getting them to lean into you and buy from you is you got to really know your stuff. So when, like in Kevin's situation, he's able to sit across from him and go, "Hey, this is what I would do here. This is what I would do here." It's literally telling them exactly what they should be doing. And it's the same thing I do every time I sit across from somebody. Is once I get to a certain point where I know where they're at in business, now I can just lean in and say, okay, this is what you need to do next. This is what you need to do next, right? And it's very much a teaching or an education moment. And two things happen when you do that. And Kevin's good, since his example's right in front of us. I mean, the guy said, "I don't need to talk to anybody else. I just think we should just move forward with you." And that's what happens when you have all things connected and aligned, because they realize there's a bond, there's a rapport, but they also know exactly that you know what the fuck you're talking about.
I think a lot of people are scared to do that though. They're afraid they're giving away their secret sauce, and
Yeah.
that it's going to hurt them in the long run. You know,
Is this
we
the
get
point we
on.
tell them there is no fucking secret sauce?
Yeah, there isn't. You know, the more you share, the more people are going to understand that, wow, this guy is actually an expert and knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
It's when you try and hide stuff that you now start to sound like the flim flam artist, where you're trying to
Yes.
tell just enough
Wait,
to get the
flim
people.
flam?
Flim flam.
Flim flam. Keep going. I'm Googling
so
that.
so yeah, you're telling them just enough to get them excited and get them in, but not telling them enough for them to actually, do things. It's kind of like the old magicians, well, we never tell people how we do our stuff. So
Flim flam, nonsensical or insincere talk. Good word. It's actually a damn word.
it is.
But yeah, I mean that's and I think this is a little bit hard when you're first starting out selling whatever you're selling, because maybe you don't know all the pieces to the puzzle that you need to be able to tell somebody, this is what I would do, and sincerely tell them what they should be doing next in their business. But I think it's the point of, we're all going to get questions asked of us at some point that we may not know the answer to. And I think there's, everybody always says I can go back and figure that out. I would challenge it, instead of saying, "Hey, I go back and figure this out," to really more lean in and go, "Well, what do you have in mind here at this point?" And let them educate you, through the process, so you can learn it versus trying to go back and figure it out. I think it just allows you to plant your feet a
Yeah,
little bit more.
this client had a online software system that they use that manages the fights, the events, the tournament. So it actually, like, you
Mm,
put in all your fighters, it creates all the brackets, figures out, hey, here's what mats they all need to be on, all that type of stuff. And then you
cool.
have it all set up for each mat has their access, and they're running all their stuff. So
Hold on, because I need to be a cool point. 1 second. How much did you geek out on them telling you
no,
about
it
that
was really cool,
software?
and I went and searched for it because I had never
Yeah.
heard about it before. I'm like, oh, that sounds really fun. So I went and looked, and he's like, yeah, so we want to integrate it with the website and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm not seeing anything on their website about any technical capabilities for this. So, and I had to do that. You know what? I don't know if how we can integrate this. I've already emailed them. So I already dropped them a message as we are chatting, like, hey, I asked them already, and I'll see what they come back with. But I'm like, even if we can't do a let's pass information from one system to another because they don't have that set up, there's still ways that we can get your fighters who are going to be at the events to actually get the link. So there's ways we can work
Yeah.
around it. So I didn't leave them completely hanging. I said, hey, I understand what you want to do. I don't know if that's technically possible with this system, but hey, here's another way that we can do it. And you get them what they
Well,
need.
and this is just me. Yeah, this is just me geeking out a little bit with Kevin. I mean, with the way you do things, not only could they get an email, but they could get a text to their phone that says, "Hey, Matt, so and so,
Yep.
triggered off the back end." I mean, but that's part of it, man. Is you got to geek out on your stuff and geek out on your client stuff. Yeah, I think for a lot of us, we haven't had enough conversation to get really comfortable for with what we did early on, especially in our careers. And this is where Kevin and I always talk about, man, you got to go get into a lot of conversations so you can figure out what to say at this moment because you've been there before. And there's damn near no question you could ask Kevin and I about our companies, what we do that we don't have an answer for, technology aside. I mean, there's going to be things in there you're like, yeah, shit, I have no idea. I've never seen that technology in my life. But the rest of it, we've been in that conversation before. Oh, that's freaking awesome. What else would you tell people to do to get them to lean into, buying, telling you they're ready to buy or wanting to buy?
I think we've really covered the big things. You need to be authentic and have that real conversation. You need to solve their issues and teach them, and just not be a sales douche canoe. Stop pulling out all those hard closes.
We're getting messages every time we say douche
That's
canoe.
all right.
People send us messages. It's funny.
I'm okay with that. It is a very descriptive word, and it's
Right?
accurate for those people. So, but you don't pull out all the hard closes. Have a real conversation about next steps, and don't focus on getting that big yes. Focus on closure to that conversation, because you may be in a situation where you can one call close the client. I really thought for this one over the weekend that it was going to be a price thing for them, and he was going to be price shopping. So I wasn't, that might be part of it. I wasn't trying to one call close. I was just, having a cool conversation, and I was focused on, all right, so what's my next steps? And that next step happened to be, hey, let's set up a time with my operations guy and we can talk more and then we can get the ball going so he knows what we're doing. I'm like, perfect, let's do it. So, it's don't hard close. Focus on the next steps for your relationship, not for the sale, and just let things happen.
Love it. I love it. So, guys, for this episode, I think Kevin summed it up really nicely for us. Go have fun and have real conversations. Be a damn human. And as always, if you got any tips, tricks, any value out of this episode, do us a favor. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And share this episode out with one person, man. Sharing that episode out, it means the world to us. And as always, love you, mean it. See you, bye.